everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing you a trash to treasure video where I'll be making over 2 home decor projects using my Cricut Explore 3. I really hope that you enjoy today's video, and I do want to thank Cricut so much for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get started. Before I get started on today's projects, some of you may not even know what a Cricut machine is. It is an electronic cutting machine that can cut over 100 different materials such as vinyl, paper, cardstock, fabric, balsa wood, and so much more. It can even draw, and it has really upped my crafting game to the next level. So in case you guys were not aware of what a Cricut machine does, I wanted to let you know that before I got started on my projects today. And for both of my projects, I'm going to be cutting out vinyl. For the first project today, I'm going to be making over these 2 books. These I've had for probably like 14 years. They're originally from Kirkland's. They just no longer fit with my current style, so I'm going to be making them over today. To make them over, I'm going to be using my Cricut Design Space. It is a free app that you can either use from your computer, your tablet, or a mobile device, and it is compatible with iOS and Android. To create my designs to go on my books today, I'm going into my Cricut Design Space, and the first thing I'm doing is going to the left-hand side and selecting text. And then for this one, I'm typing out the words "our life." Then I'm going back to text because I'm going to be creating a second text, and for this one, I'm typing out "our story," and then I'm going to go back to text to create my third one, and this one's going to say "our home." Now that I have all those typed out, I did want to change the font, so I went to the top left-hand side and selected font, and then I'm going to be choosing a Cricut font. Cricut has so many different fonts to choose from. If you're indecisive like I am, that can be the hardest part of your project, is picking a font. I did know that I wanted to use a typewriter font, so I did go in the search bar at the top and then just typed out the word type, and a typewriter font did come up, so I selected that one. And then I went through for the last 2 of my fonts and just changed those to the typewriter font. I do have 2 different books I'm doing writing for, so this is going to be on the bottom book, but I am going to be doing writing on a top book. So for this one, I'm going and selecting the text once again, and I'm typing out "this is us." I am going to be keeping that same typewriter font for this. Then I know that I want to do some images, so I went to the left-hand side where it says images, selected that, and then in the search bar, I'm typing out the word flowers because I know that I want to add some sort of flower to this. So again, Cricut Design Space has so many flower images to choose from, and I went through and picked one that I liked. As you can see here at the bottom, it shows that it's selected, and then I'm just going to select at the bottom right-hand side where it says add to canvas. Now my flower is added to my canvas, and I do want to add a second image. So for this one, I went back into images. I deleted where it said flowers, where I had just searched for flowers, and this time I typed out the word heart because I know that I'm going to be adding a heart to this. Again, Design Space has tons of hearts, but I did want one that was just like an outline of a heart. So I went through and found one of those. I selected that and then inserted that one into my canvas. Now that I have all of my images and fonts that I'm going to be using for my design on my canvas, I'm then just going to start resizing everything. I know that I want the "this is us" to be a little bit larger, and then I just changed the size of my flower and turned it just a little bit. Once I had those all set to where I wanted them to be, I highlighted the flower and "this is us" together, and then went to the bottom right-hand side and hit attach so that it attached those 2 images together so that it's one piece. Then I started on the "our life," "our story," "our home" fonts. I just resized those down. The same with the heart. I am going to have a heart in between all of my words. So I just got that all resized, and then I right-clicked the heart and then went down to duplicate so that it would duplicate the exact same heart. And then I placed that heart in between the words "our story" and "our home." our home. And then once everything was all resized and ready to go, I then just highlighted everything together and then went back down to the right lower hand side and hit attach so that everything would be one piece for me to cut out. I'm then selecting Make It at the top right hand side, and then it pulls up a page that says either I'm going to be cutting without a mat or on a mat. Since I'm using Cricut Smart Vinyl on a roll today, I selected without a mat, and then I don't need to mirror my images or anything, so I just select Continue on the bottom right hand side, and then it pulls up a page where I select what kind of material I'm going to be using. Like I said, I'm going to be using my Cricut Smart removable vinyl, so I'm selecting that, and then it's all ready for me to cut out. For this, I'm using the white Cricut removable vinyl, and I'm going to be using it on my roll holder here. As you can see, all of the vinyl says what it is on the back, or at least for the removable smart vinyl. This one, it shows you it's Cricut removable smart vinyl, and it does have a grid print on the back here. I'm just going to be placing my roll in my roll holder and getting it fed through the little slot there at the top, and then I'm placing my roll holder on the little grooves that are on my Cricut Explore 3, and then just feeding that into the space where the vinyl goes before I feed it in, so that my Cricut Explore 3 can measure exactly how much vinyl it's going to be using for my design today before it starts cutting out my design. After all of my designs are cut out, I am just going to set those aside for right now until I need them later on in my projects. I am going to be moving on to the books now and showing you how I'm going to be making them over. As you can see, both of the books have this like fabric type padding. It's like a pleather material. I do want that all off of the books, and luckily for me, since these books are pretty old, it was already peeling off and the glue just wasn't keeping that attached anymore, so I was able to really easily just peel that off of both of my books. Once all of that was off, I then took a sanding block and some sandpaper and just sanded around all of the edges that were a little rough, and then some of that glue that was still on, I did take a little bit rougher of some sandpaper and just sanded that right away. Once I had my books all sanded down, they were all ready to start getting painted, and for the paint today, I'm using the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle, and I did paint 2 coats of this paint on all of the portions of my books. After the castle color was all dry, I took a smaller paintbrush with a little bit of my ivory colored chalk paint from Waverly, and I went around all of the edges of my books with that just to give them a little bit of a distressed look. Now you can see that when I took all of that glue off, it did take this top portion of my book off because it was attached with the glue. I am never going to need to use this inside compartment on these books, so I went ahead and just hot glued that wood piece back on because, like I said, I'll never use that compartment anyway. Now I'm going to be going back to my vinyl that I had all cut out, and here you can see I'm just weeding all of my vinyl, and this Cricut Smart removable vinyl for me is like the easiest removable vinyl to weed. And once I had it all weeded, I used some of my Cricut transfer tape and then just pressed it on with my Cricut scraper tool. And then once it was all transferred onto my transfer tape, I just made sure that it was all centered on my book and then got that all transferred on with the Cricut scraper tool. Then I decided I wanted to add a little bit more distressing to the top and bottom of my books, so I just took that same ivory color from Waverly on a chip brush and very lightly dry brushed that on the top and bottom portions of both of my books. And I still needed to transfer the other sayings that I had typed out, the our life, our story, our home, that I had already cut out with the other design. And here I'm just getting it all transferred onto my Cricut transfer tape with my scraper tool. And then once I have that all centered onto my book, I'm using my scraper tool once again to press that vinyl onto my book. Now I'm going to be adding some detail to my books. I have this a really pretty gray and cream ribbon that I got from Walmart probably a couple years ago now. I'm just measuring that to go around the very top of my books, and then I'm hot gluing the ends of that ribbon along the bottom of my books. And then once I have the ribbon all attached, I thought it would be really cute to add some greenery to the top. These greenery pieces I believe are from Hobby Lobby. I'm not 100% on that. These are just in my craft stash, so I think they're from Hobby Lobby, but I did not want to attach them with hot glue because I do want to be able to switch my greenery out by like whatever season it is. So I just stuck those underneath the ribbon, and then I made a really simple shoelace bow with that same ribbon. And then for the tail ends of the ribbon, I did cut those into like a V shape. And then I had glued my bow right in the center of my ribbon on top of my books. And here are what my books look like all finished. They turned out so good and they go perfectly with my home decor. I was able to create such a high-end look by using my Cricut machine with the Cricut vinyl. I am going to be making over one more piece today. It is this flatware box that I picked up from Goodwill. I paid $6.99 for it, and I thought it was just such a perfect piece to really transform and make it into something beautiful. To create the design that I'm going to be using on this piece, I went into my Cricut design space, and for this one I just went to images on the left hand side, and then in the search bar I typed out the word bird and flower because I know that I wanted to add some sort of bird and flower, and I figured why not just look and see what Cricut design space has to offer. They had so many images that came up, and after looking at quite a few, I ended up going with the very first image that it pulled up. So I selected that image, and then as you can see at the bottom, the image is selected, and then I just went over to add image to canvas, and I just added it to my canvas. I then just resized the image. I made it a lot larger so that it would fit better onto my piece, and that was it. It was all ready for me to cut out. So I went to make it at the top right hand side, and again I'm using without a mat since I'm using my Cricut Smart Removable Vinyl on a vinyl roll, and then I did not need to mirror my image or anything like that, so I hit continue on the lower right hand side. And then again, I needed to select my material, and for this one I am using the same vinyl as before, the Smart Removable Cricut Vinyl, so I selected that one. Here's the vinyl that I'm going to be using today. It is the same vinyl as the last project I did, only this time I'm using the black color. Again, I'll show you on the back of it. It does say that it is the Cricut Smart Vinyl, and it is a removable, and it's obviously black. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just placing it into my roll holder and then putting it through the slot at the top, loading it onto my Cricut Explore 3, and then feeding my vinyl into the machine. My Explorer 3 then cuts out all of my vinyl with my design, and then it's time for me to weed the vinyl. I love this Cricut Smart Removable Vinyl. Like I had said with the last project, it is so easy to weed it out. A little bit easier than just your regular Cricut vinyl. And I do like weeding in sections. Like if I have a little bit larger of a design like this one, I'll weed a little bit and then cut off the vinyl so that it doesn't accidentally stick to another part of my design. I just do this and think it's a little bit easier so that I don't have any mess ups. After my design was all weeded, I then set it aside and moved on to my box. As you can see here, the inside of this box is actually in a really good shape. Even though I'm not going to be using it for flatware, I'm really not going to be using the inside of it either, so I just left that as is. Then I flipped my box over, and it did have these little sticky tabs on the bottom. I just peeled those away, and then any sticky residue that was left over, I just used a little bit of sandpaper to sand that down and get my surface all ready for painting. I then painted my entire box with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. Since this is a little bit of a darker wood piece, I did do 3 different coats of this paint to get everything all covered up, and I did paint right over top of all of the hardware that was on this piece as well. Once all of the paint was dry, I then took some 80 grit sandpaper and started sanding away all of the edges. I wanted this piece to look really distressed. If you guys have seen any of my projects in the past, you know I love a good distressed look. So once I had all of the edges sanded, then I decided I wanted to have a little bit of that same distressing on the top and bottom of my piece as well. So I just sanded in random spots to give it that worn look. Now my piece is all ready for me to add my vinyl. So here I'm just using my Cricut transfer tape over top of my vinyl image and getting that all transferred onto the tape using my Cricut scraper tool. And then I'm just making sure that my image is centered right on the very top of my box before I use that scraper tool once again to press the vinyl onto my box. And this is what my box looks like all finished. I think it turned out beautiful, and it is such a great piece that I can now have displayed in my home. By using my Cricut Explore 3, I was able to create such high-end looks with both of my projects today, and it was super easy. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and I do want to thank Cricut again so much for sponsoring today's video. Thank you so much for watching.